Well, I guess Canon finally did it. They're going after Sony's FX lineup. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a hands-on preview of Canon's latest cinema hybrid camera, the C50. Now you can think of this as a mix between the R5C and the C80, kind of like they had a baby. This is also Canon finally coming out with something that goes up against Sony's FX-3 or the FX-2 type of cameras. This is a true hybrid camera. You do have the ability to do stills, but it is primarily focused on cinema. And that's how I think most people are going to shoot it, because you really shouldn't be shooting stills with this bad boy. Now, I have had the camera for a few days, and we are shooting this entire review with it right now. I'll get to all of the settings that we're using when we get to that section a little later on, but I also took it out to the Phillies game to run it through its paces. Now keep in mind, I'm generally a stills photographer, but this is more designed for someone like me who's getting into the cinema world and wants to have the best of both worlds. Now yes, you have the stills, but it is predominantly video, as I already mentioned, and that's how I used it, with a very small portion of testing out the sensor for shooting stills, and we'll talk about that in that section as well. Now let's talk about the body. It is a brand new compact cinema camera. Now it has a cage-free design, which means it has a lot of 1/4-20s all around it, which is very similar to what you would see in Sony's FX cameras. Now, it's very similar in size and weight to the R5C, except for the fact that they cut off the EVF from the top. We all know I'm a big fan of using an EVF, but they did away with it here, and most cinema cameras don't have it, though Sony did add it back with their FX2 camera. Now, as I mentioned, this is a true hybrid camera because Canon has two different menu systems. You've got the one menu system for stills, which I'm familiar with and very used to using, and they also have the full cinema menu system, which is very complicated for me because I don't come from that cinema world, and that's why I had Steven set up that entire portion. But this is where I wish Canon would kind of merge the two. For people that are hybrid shooters that do cinema and do stills, that it would be much easier if they combined it and did something that was very similar to what Sony did with their latest menus, which is less complicated than Canon's menus. Now keep in mind, if you go from stills to video or video to stills with the switch on the top of the camera, it ends up taking roughly 3 to 4 seconds for that all to click in. So there is a little time delay when that happens, but it is much faster than it used to be with some of their other cinema cameras. Now, in terms of cooling, it has a giant built-in cooling fan, and I had 0.00 issues or worry that I was going to overheat. Now, if I had my Canon R1, I definitely would have overheated during the days that I was shooting because it was upper 80s with pretty high humidity in the middle of the day shooting an afternoon game and having that sun beat down on me. And I had absolutely zero issues because of the built-in fan. Now, if you're someone who fumbles around trying to find your record button, you won't have any problem here because there are multiple record buttons throughout this camera. But you also have tally lights. Well, why wouldn't you have tally lights? It is a cinema camera. I can see it's recording right now because I got a tally light on the front, and there's also a red box that goes around the LCD screen. It is a thick red box, so you always know when you're recording. Now, Canon is basically copying Sony because they're including a brand new top handle with this camera. Now, the top handle screws into the top of the camera and goes into the digital hot shoe because, yes, you do have a digital hot shoe on this C50. Now, what is great about the handle is you have 2 XLR inputs, and that information gets fed through the digital hot shoe into the camera. Now, this top handle only supports 24-bit audio, and it doesn't give you 32-bit float. You also have a cold shoe on top, which was great and perfect for me because that is where I put an external display so I could hold it like an actual cinema photographer or cinematographer and not have to, shoot like I'm shooting stills. And personally, I found it much much more enjoyable to shoot with that top handle and that screen on the top, rather than the old way that I would do it by putting my eye up to the viewfinder. Now, both the camera and the top handle have a dedicated zoom rocker in case you have any of those lenses that can take advantage of that. Now, if you don't have a lens that takes advantage of that, you could do digital zoom, but I'm not a big fan of digital zoom of any kind. Now, as you notice on the back of the camera, you have a full 3-inch, 1.62 million dot vari-angle touchscreen that is very bright. It's the same one that you find on the R6 Mark II, and it's the same size as on the FX-3. In my usage, it is way too small. It's nice and bright. I could use it outdoors, but I don't see very well. And that's why I always liked having the electronic viewfinder, so I could shove my eye into the camera and be able to see everything magnified and much easier. I personally would like to see them go with bigger screens. I'd rather have it flip out on the back of the camera, kind of like some of the still cameras that Sony makes. That would be much better. Now, in terms of ports, we are almost airtight with this camera because we're using USB-C to charge, we're using a microphone input, and we're also using the headphone jack. But you do have timecode as well as a full HDMI port, which is what I was using when I was using the external Atomos for my display. Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by B&H and their Payboo credit card, where you pay the tax and B&H pays you back instantly. Now, there's two ways you can save. One, like I just said, you pay the tax and B&H pays you back instantly, or two, you can get 12-month special financing of purchases of $599 or more. Now, I personally choose to save the tax, but both options are great options to have. Now, I save tax on everything I order from B&H, from cameras to lenses like this new Canon C50, you could save really big, or hard drives to TVs, computers, and even film for Big Bertha. Whether you spend $10 or $10,000, those tax savings add up.
Low on cash, but still need to get your boo? Don't worry.
For more information and to apply for your card right now, head on over to the link on the screen or down below in the description. And remember to always charge responsibly. Now, let's get back to the video. So how is the battery life? Well, the battery life is what you would expect when you're using the LPE6P. That is the same battery in the R5 Mark II. It is a very good battery, but being that it is smaller and it's on the smaller side when it comes to cinema batteries, you're gonna chew it up fairly quick. Just be prepared to have extra batteries or a battery charger that's USB-C so you can keep a battery charged while you're shooting. Of course, a lot depends on the frame rate that you're shooting, as well as how long you're shooting. Is your screen extra bright, and how much is that fan blowing? Moving on to the memory card slots, because this is pretty good. You have dual slots. You've got CF Express B and you have SD. The reason that's important is because the C80, which is more expensive and higher end than this, has two SD card slots. And I wrote here a note that says boo. I say boo because it probably should have had at least one CF Express B card slot. Now, you can do redundant recording as well as proxy recording to a second card, as well as a new crop mode, which is pretty cool because you get 1080p 916 vertical to an SD card. That's gonna come in handy for those sports shooters that are doing, the ones that I know at baseball who also shoot football. They love the fact that you're gonna be able to do that 916 right there to an SD card and be able to pop it out and put it right up on the internet or do whatever they need to do without having to go into editing software, chop off the edges, re-export it, then upload it to the client. So that is a good feature for them. It's probably pretty useless for me, but it's not just recording the middle of the screen. You have the ability to tell the box where you want it to be when you get that cut down. Now, here's some slight cons to the camera. You do not have any ND filters built in. When I asked about that, they said, well, of course, you would need to have a taller camera to fit those NDs to have them flip out of the way. That adds expense. I would like to have ND filters built in, but you do have the other options with higher end Canons. You could get a C80, but then you get into bigger size and a higher price point. So they have to make some cuts and changes somewhere. And because it doesn't have built-in ND, I had to carry around my own variable ND filter. Not the end of the world, it would just be much easier if I could press a button. Now, one of the biggest misses and fails that I think Canon has in this cinema camera is the fact that it does not have IBIS. There are other cinema cameras from Sony and Nikon that are including IBIS at this point. These cinema cameras should have IBIS and not just digital stabilization. Now, I know there's a lot of cinema shooters who are like, you shouldn't have stabilization built into cameras. Well, they're the same people who said you probably shouldn't have autofocus built in either. And when we have lenses that shoot at 1.2 and 1.4 and f2 and they track subjects with how awesome autofocus is in these cameras, yeah, you should have IBIS and you should have autofocus. So I think that's a swing and a miss for the C50 just in terms of IBIS. Let's move in to the inside of the camera. We have a brand new 32 megapixel 7K full frame sensor. It has the same processor as the C80. Now, the C50 is not a BSI sensor. It is also not stacked and it's not DGO, but it is a brand new sensor, and Canon says that it does have a very fast readout speed. Now, for most of the stuff that I shot, I had minimal rolling shutter in the real world where things actually do matter. If you do want to get into that BSI sensor or a stack sensor, you're going to be moving up in price to the C80. So always remember that. They can't give you every bell and whistle for less money in the body that they're doing when there's already something that exists, but in order to get it, you're going to have to spend a little bit more. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The sensor size. Unlike most cinema cameras that have a 16:9 sensor, this has a full 3:2 sensor, very similar to what you find in your full frame still cameras. Therefore, Canon has unlocked the ability to do open gate recording in 3.2. That means you're getting a full 7K recording of the entire sensor inside of the C50. And that's exactly how we're recording right now. And you can see things that you don't normally see on our set because you're getting the entire sensor. So if you want to crop it in a vertical format, that means you're getting more top and more bottom, which you wouldn't get with the other types of sensors. And also, if you want to reframe later or change some of your cropping, you can do that with open gate, but that also comes with a caveat. You can only do it up to 30p in H.265 or RAW. Another reason you would shoot open gate is if you like to shoot anamorphic lenses to desqueeze, which this camera supports. Now, what other two cameras have a full 3.2 sensor in them in Canon's cinema universe? One is the C400 and one is the C80, and you're like, well, why can't I do this? Well, we're being told that the C400 will get a future firmware update to allow for open gate, but the C80 will not, most likely due to the fact that it has two SD cards. The native ISO is 100 to 102,400. Now, I shot in C-Log2, which gave me a dual base ISO of 800 and 6400. Now, keep in mind, it's a dual base ISO sensor, not a triple base ISO sensor like the C80 and C400. Speaking of shooting log, you have your normal log profiles that you're used to in a camera like this, including C-Log2, which we're shooting in right now, and that's gonna give you up to 16 stops of dynamic range. I shot everything out at the Phillies game in C-Log2, and the colors and the tones and the dynamic range looked fantastic. Now let's get into resolution and frame rates. You have full frame DCI 4K video, which is oversampled from 7K up to 30p in 10-bit 422 color in all I. Now you can shoot in 4K up to 60p with full audio, which is how I shot some of the clips out there, and I didn't really see a large hit to quality. Keep in mind, that's not oversampled like the 30p and other modes below. For slow motion, you can shoot full frame 4K 120 with no audio. I like when you get audio in slow-mo, but here you don't get audio, which is similar to what you had in the original R5. For super slow-mo, you can also do 2K up to 180p. Now, enough talking about this camera, let's see it in action, and here is a montage of what I captured out at the Phillies game. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you FroPack 4 in action on this photo right here, taken with a Canon, starting with Blue's Clues, followed by Brooklyn, C41, Copper Tone, High C, Kaleidoscope, Mel Brooks, Saltwater Taffy, Thick, Tintype, and Wet Hot American Summer. But check this out. My all-time favorite from FroPack 1 is Skittles. With one click of a button, we go boom. But check this out. Exclusive and all new to FroPack 4, we've got 4 custom adaptive Lightroom presets that include Face Enhance, Full Body Enhance, Eye Only Enhance, as well as Background Blur. So look, if you want to speed up your raw workflow, give yourself a great starting point, or you're just tired of other people's presets sucking, ours don't suck. We've created 14 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at froknowsphoto.com/FroPack4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to get the Grand Slam bundle that includes FroPack 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course Skittles, you will save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Since this is a cinema camera, it does shoot raw video. Now, you know that I shoot raw photos, but do I shoot raw video? And the answer to that is usually no, because it's kind of unnecessary, but you do have the option to do it here. In terms of raw, it does 7K 12-bit cinema raw light, up to 60p internally in the usual light standard and high quality options. Moving on to the autofocus, it has an updated version of the C80's dual pixel AF2 autofocus system that gives you people plus animals, and it has the same AF modes for stills that you always find when you are using Canon cameras, which are all fantastic. Now for video, which I'm not used to shooting a lot of cinema video, I thought the autofocus was incredible. When I needed to touch the screen, I could just touch the screen and it would lock on and track a subject, or for the most part, I was in whole area AF and it did exactly what I needed it to do. The autofocus was snappy and quick, and I loved it. As I mentioned earlier, you can use this as a stills camera. Normally when we make our videos, we do all of the talking about stills and very little about cinema, except for the fact that this is cinema first with the options of stills. You can shoot 40 frames per second raw with pre-capture. Now there's no shutter, there's no regular shutter built into this camera. They've done away with it and you only have an electronic shutter. But does that mean that the readout speed is super slow and you're gonna get a lot of bowing of bats and balls or people? I will tell you, it wasn't as bad as I would have expected. It's gotten much better over the years, which leads me to believe, is this the sensor that we might see inside of a future R6 Mark III? I don't know. I don't know if it is, but maybe it is. And maybe they're doing away with the shutter, though I don't think they're gonna do away with a regular shutter just yet, especially when it is not a stacked sensor. As expected, you have all of the cinema exposure tools like waveforms and vector scopes. You have user-imported LUTs, as well as other pro features like shutter angle, which helped me when I was switching between frame rates because I didn't have to change the shutter speed like I have to do on non-cinema cameras. Unlike the R5C, you have XC protocol support for remote controlling the camera in productions. The R5C didn't have Wi-Fi support in video mode. Well, this C50 has added that feature, so you can now use Canon's control app. So how much does this cost? $3,900. It has taken Canon a long while to come out with something that goes up against the FX-3 and of course the FX-2, which is newer. But the big question is, what is Sony gonna come out with next? Because they're probably close to an FX-3 version 2. Will that put Canon really far behind? We don't know right now because that thing doesn't exist as of yet. But as someone who doesn't do a lot of cinema shooting, I've shot my bowling show with an R1 and I've held the camera like this. I have to say, I really enjoyed using a cinema camera the way that it was designed to be shot. I had no worry about overheating. I had all of the features and functions that I needed. I liked that I could put a big screen on it externally and hold it differently, high or low, and use it the way that I needed to use it. And I was happy with the results that I was getting. For someone that doesn't use cinema very often, this camera was fairly easy to get pretty quick. Not in terms of setting up the menu, but once the menu was set up and knowing where the features were, just to get out there and shoot, I think I did a really good job. Now, of course, there's other features that I would like it to have, but if you wanted to have all those features, you got the C80. You want to go higher than that, you got the C400. This is in a good point, a good price point. They're giving you a lot of options, and I don't think they're gonna stop here. I think they'll come out with more in the future. So I thank you guys very much for watching. Jared, PolinFronosPhoto.com. See ya.